Neuroendocrine cancer does not discriminate. David and Kevin and I are all physicians, and cancer doesn't care what you do or where you're at in life, what stage you are. It just does its thing, and we're all infected by it. We're all impacted by it. I don't know what to make of the fact that all three of us, as physiatrists, were diagnosed with this rare cancer. I tried to do the statistical analysis on it before, but I'm not good enough to do that. But maybe I could find somebody that could, just because it's interesting. You can't tie it to anything. We don't know why neuroendocrine tumor happens to us. Maybe we will one day, but there's no thread there that makes sense to say we all received this diagnosis because of something related to our training.
I even asked Dave, was there something you guys did in training that could have caused this? Because it just seems so weird to have three guys doing the same specialty, which is small, and then having this really rare type of cancer.
It was kind of a special kinship and connection in that we, again, had kind of dealt with the same training, the same mindset. We had a similar philosophy. We were equally yoked, I think, in how we looked at the world. And so it was nice to have that togetherness as we were kind of going through this. So it's hard to understand, I think, for people on the outside of what it's like to live day to day with something that isn't well understood by the medical community, maybe not even well accepted in a lot of circles.
I think in mine and Kevin's relationship, I was really the one that he leaned upon for this diagnosis. And I was trying to find the best expert that I could find, because Kevin and I wanted him to have the best care, because we wanted to ensure that he had every opportunity to live as long of a life as he could. And I noticed one day that Paul Jett and Dr. Lou were friends on Facebook. So I had previously met Paul from a professional standpoint and reached out to him and just said, hey, I noticed that you were friends with Dr. Lou. You probably won't believe this, but Kevin got diagnosed with this really rare form of cancer. And I wondered if you would make a connection with us and Dr. Lou, thinking that they had probably went to medical school or something together. And Paul sent me a note back and said, no, Karen, you won't believe this. I also got diagnosed with neuroendocrine cancer.
So I got connected with Dave through another mutual friend, also in the medical field, Paul Maven, whose wife Ellie had gone to school with Dave's wife Sanea. And although they were in North Carolina and we were in Tennessee, they had had this conversation. And I believe Ellie had recalled that I was dealing with this as well. And she put Dave in touch with me directly, at which time it was like deja vu, in that Dave and I, although we had never met, we'd both been trained the same way. We both thought about things very similarly. And it was, again, just an addition to that brotherhood and fraternity that you didn't really want to have happen. But it was also nice to have comfort in knowing that there were other people out there that were struggling and dealing with it.
It was a kind of a doorway, I think, that we stepped through that first conversation with Paul. That's how it felt, that we had been very sort of isolated and lost. And when my friend mentioned Dave and Paul talked, it just felt like a door opened, and all of a sudden it wasn't just us kind of floundering around, not knowing what this was, how to handle it, kind of having access to a whole group of people who this was not new. They understood it far better than we had resources and experiences. That was huge. Then Paul introduced Kevin to David, and then it was like really strange. 3 PMR guys with the same diagnosis. That really seemed divinely connected. I don't know. It was really strange.
I think that Paul and Kevin and Dave were brought together to support one another through their journey. And even though they didn't talk very frequently, just knowing that a fellow physician in the same specialty was going through a similar journey as your own, I think in some way brought a level of friendship that it didn't take being in constant contact with one another, some collegiality, and just knowing that there was somebody fighting for you, because the three of them all had each other's back and fought for each other.
Because Kevin's tumor was a bit more aggressive, I think, than Paul's. There were some things he talked about with Kevin that sort of, I guess, felt more, what they could relate more to each other in some situations. And certainly over the couple of years, as different situations happened and we went through different procedures, I think he was in contact with both of them, sharing his experience and how it was going. But I think one thing for sure for Dave, just having both of those guys out there, surviving, continuing to practice medicine, continuing to be in practice and doing the therapies and making it, was a very important part of Dave's journey.
I can recall times that the three of them would get on the phone together, and I was always Kevin's sidekick. I was usually on the phone with them, but they would talk about their cancer, they would talk about where they were in their treatment, different type of treatments that they were going through. And I think that they opened up to one another in ways that they felt comfortable doing, not knowing each other extremely well. They knew the battles of trying to be a physician and trying to continue doing the thing that gives you great joy while being sick and not feeling well and taking chemo and going through other treatments.
I think one of the reasons that Kevin and Dave and I connected so quickly is because we had a lot of personality traits that were similar. I think we all tried to have a lighthearted approach to things, all have a spiritual side that we know that we're not the ones that are in charge here. And we were able to take this diagnosis in stride and not let it define, who we are, but it just be something that we are living with and thriving with. And I think in terms of our sense of humor, I think that's used somewhat as a defense mechanism. I know it is for me, but it's also part of who I am on a higher level. And I allow that to come through when I'm practicing and dealing with patients, and I allow that personality to kind of come out. Sometimes it can be a little much, if you ask my wife, I'm sure, but it's part of who I am and where I'm ingrained to be in life. And I approach the cancer diagnosis in the same way.
Dave and Kevin never met in person. I don't know that things would have been different if they had, because I think just the similarities in their journey, the rare diagnosis, the field of medicine that they practice, were enough similarities for them to be lifelong friends, whether they had had a cancer diagnosis or not.
I'm not a big deal personally at any level, but if I have an opportunity to present that story to somebody and they're going to hear it and maybe help somebody else out that might be dealing with similar symptoms and they didn't know about it, then I think that's a wonderful thing. And I think that's what we're supposed to be doing. Part of being a physician is to be an educator, and that's what I try to do. But it's also deeper than that for me personally. I think there are some doctors out there that are trained never to give their opinion and never give any personal insight. I'm just not one of them. Kevin and Dave were similar in that. They had compassion for the individuals around them. They were wonderful physicians and wonderful human beings, and I missed them greatly. But I think a little bit of that can continue to live on. And hopefully this messaging that we're getting out about this unusual and spiritual interaction that just God ordained, for lack of a better word, I think is really a spectacular story, and I'm glad to share it.